You're listening to iCannabisRadio.com.
And welcome to In the Lab with Jennifer. And Jill is missing. She is stuck in traffic, unfortunately, but we are here with our special guest, Heather Despres. Woo!
Hi.
Heather is the awesome chemist of Cannlabs. We are officially pulling her out of the closet. She is now stuck to me forever in Cannlabs, and we're happy to have her.
And I'm happy to be here.
She's a little bit nervous, but she'll loosen up. But I do have to say that I just came into the studio and picked up a sticker from Evo Lab, which is some guys that are doing CO2 extraction. But, oh, my God, I just Chris here was telling me that Chris was telling me that they were making CO2 extract that smelled like cake, and I said no way, and he just gave me this beautiful paper towel with some hash smashed on it, and it freaking smells like cake. I am freaking out.
I walked into the studio, and I'm like...
It smells like cake.
It smells like an oven in here, you know? And he's like...
Oh, my God.
CO2.
It's incredible. Like, we are going, that's incredible. It really does smell like cake. Okay. And if anyone knows what hash roll smells like, it does not smell like cake. So shout out to those guys at Evo Labs. Maybe we can figure out their secret. Anyway, so Jill just texted me. She is stuck in traffic for another 15 minutes. So what we are going to do today is talk science, which makes sense because we're in the lab with Jennifer. So we're going to talk about some of the things that Jill and I didn't get to talk about last week, which was the testing monograph and laboratory certifications and stuff. So basically we'll start off, Heather, and kind of explain again, just because we assume that people just don't know, but why can't Cannlabs be nationally certified?
The major part of national certification is that their government does it. So we have to apply for a government license, and our government currently does not allow us to work in the industry that we are, or at least our federal government doesn't anyway.
Perfect.
So we
we're
can't
not
get
federal
national certification because it is through federal programs, which means that we will need to develop our own guidelines and programs here in the state that mimic what these federal certifications look like.
Okay. Because we did just get an email at Cannlabs asking if we were GLP certified, Good Laboratory Practices certified, and then ISO certification 17025. And if you could explain a little bit about good laboratory practice, you know, what it entails and how we still can practice that without actually having the stamp of approval, and how we're going to, you know, proceed to get that.
So good laboratory practices came about in the 70s when people were realizing that when they were submitting applications to the FDA for drug approval, there was no way to go into the back end and verify what they were doing and how they were doing it. So there was a lot of misinformation out there. And so good laboratory practices came about in order to establish standards for laboratories that they should operate by, such as calibrating all of their instruments to within specific degrees, and just various levels of your laboratory running smoothly, calibrating your pipettes, calibrating your balances, making sure that you're wearing the proper equipment when you're in your laboratory, making sure that when you're recording data in your laboratory, there are ways so that you cannot falsify your data and keep your data good, so that when you're proposals finally do reach the FDA or whatever governing body, that they do get approved.
Right. Okay. That makes total sense. So, Jill, that was a quick 15 minutes. Wow. You must have sped. I just was on the air going, yeah, and Jill's going to be 15 minutes late. Oh, hi, Jill. Jill, Heather.
Hi. We've met.
I'm sure you've met. But really quickly, what does this smell like? Is that insane?
Like sweet
Cake. Cake. That freaking they're making hash that smells like cake. Is that incredible?
CO2.
Chris thought that he came in to have a happy birthday, but he didn't. So anyway, we're talking about
Ice cream is birthday cake. That's what it smells like. Birthday cake ice cream.
see? So anyway, we're talking about certifications, and we just went over how come Cannlabs can't be nationally or federally certified because it's federally illegal. So
Did you talk about what, like ISO certification?
So we're just getting there. So she just kind of went over good laboratory practices, GLP, and why it came about, which was very interesting. I didn't know that. And so there are several different certifications, correct? Like let's say it was federally legal and you have an environmental lab. Do you get a certain certification? Do you get to pick your certification? How does that work?
Environmental laboratories fall under NELAC, which is the National Environmental Laboratory Accreditation Program. So they have a full program already set up to guide laboratory environments and tell them how to run and operate. And ideally, there will be a similar one here soon, and ideally throughout the entire United States, that will dictate the standard practices by which every laboratory should operate. NELAC also specifies for environmental laboratories what testing methods they should use. For example, if you're looking for a hydrocarbon, maybe you run an 8260B method on a GCMS. And if you're looking for another analyte, you use an HPLC or an LCMS.
How quickly do those, so we don't have standards here yet, and at some point we will, and it's interesting you say that because Massachusetts regs say that independent third-party labs have to be ISO certified, which I don't
That's
think
what
is,
Mass said?
Yeah, or certified by an independent third party approved by Department of Health. So they're hoping someone's going to come out and create this. And so the monograph that
What were you just talking about?
the Herbal Pharmacopoeia is putting together will probably take part in that. And so I guess my question is, like, how quickly do these certifications keep up with science? So if they're dictating testing methods and it's an environmental thing and some new science comes out and you as a lab want to do that, how quick do these bodies approve those methods? Because the science is evolving rapidly here, isn't it?
I mean, it can take months to years to get a method approved. Primarily, scientists work on it in their private laboratories, or environmental laboratories fund private research facilities to do method development. And once your method is developed, you typically tend to try and get it published. That can take up to a year to get it even published. But most of the magazines operate so quickly now that everything's electronically submitted, so you can see it posted on their website as accepted and in press.
That's awesome.
So you can get access to stuff that people have published sooner. But it can take years to develop if you don't have somebody on top of it going, just pushing it into action.
Which is hard to do in cannabis because I don't see any grants running through my door right now.
No, and the private capital isn't quite there yet, especially when you're developing things for an entire industry and you can't really particularly be able to benefit solely from that. We just don't see a ton of money going into testing. It's more in product development. And so
it is. And we're hoping to change that. I mean, I know that Cannlabs wants to do some research, and I know the dollars are there. It's just a matter of how are we explaining the return on investment to the investors, because there definitely is. So, Cannlabs will be working on that, the rest of this year and next year. And but let's talk about. I have a few here that were suggested at the in Washington, and The first one is the Association of Analytical Communities, AOAC. So do you know much about them, and who do they usually certify? What kind of labs?
The AOAC has their own set of publications and standards. They're just kind of another similar body like NELAC, the EPA, the FDA.
Is this
that
private?
Has,
AOAC?
no, they're a public organization that you can join, sort
Oh,
of
okay.
like the ACS, the American Chemical
There's
Society.
actually an international association which certifies certifiers. So when you talk about like all of these different organizations, they're all certified by this international board of certification. And so if a cannabis company pops up and says we're going to certify labs and grows and other things, they're going to want to be accredited by this big international board. Whether or not they'll be able to will be a different story. That will probably take years. But there are groups that say, yes, these people are certified to certify.
Okay, so yeah, it says the AOAC International is a nonprofit scientific association headquartered in Maryland, and it publishes standardized chemical analysis methods designed to increase confidence in results of chemical and microbiologic analysis, which is awesome because the problem right now, and that has been obviously, is the confidence in testing for several reasons. That's happened. And I'm telling you, every show, I'm thrilled that we're going to get regulated and we'll be able to apply for a lab license October 1st of this year. And that definitely will, thank God, be out of people's minds because again, I don't blame people. I mean, I would probably want to know, where, that I would want to use a lab that was certified also, but I'd also like to buy product that's certified out of a grow too, which, hopefully we'll be moving forward to as well. So if we called the AOAC, can they certify us? Do you know?
I'm not entirely sure about that, but
Okay.
probably. It depends if we were running an AOAC method.
Oh, so so you'd
So
have to
they have their own published methods. So like the EPA has their specific methods that they use, and the AOAC has their methods they use. Most of the time, when they overlap, they are pretty much the same and similar, but it's all a matter of method validation and proving that what you're doing is actually working.
Okay, and what is validating your method? What does that mean?
Validating your method basically means that you've run it through in a very rigorous set of tests to ensure potency, accuracy, limits of quantitation, limits of detection, basically just how well you're doing works and how well it does over and over and over again.
Repeatability, which we know is very important in science. Interesting. And Cannlabs has never validated their method. But we are, thanks to Heather, she is going to, get our method validated and everything, and we'll be posting all that information and then right in time for our laboratory license. Now, I have to say, though, that even if Cannlabs could get validated right this second, we probably wouldn't because there's no, as much as overhead as we have right now, and with only 5% of a market testing, it's really hard, to stay in the black. So, and then to go and pay X amount of dollars, it's going to be $5,000 for our laboratory license. So, we have to choose wisely of what we do. Now, accurate results is the most important thing. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing without that. But until now, there's been, really no huge push to do that because, again, it's like we're comparing apples to oranges right now with the few laboratories that we have. So it's kind of hard to get that done. But we have to take a break, and we'll be right back.
The chocolatiers at Incredibles are dedicated to crafting the finest chocolate from high-quality ingredients to ensure the greatest possible medicated edibles in the world. Consistency and quality are top priority. Lab testing on each and every batch. Rick and Josh have been making non-medicated chocolates for years for such retail outlets as Whole Foods and Vitamin Cottage. Today, we are focused on crafting our award-winning medicated incredible chocolate bars. We are professional bakers, and we believe food should be made from scratch. We guarantee your satisfaction. Have an incredible day.
Blue Sage Microbes unveils the ultimate in superior soil. Ideal Soil, a 16-quart bag of the best growing soil ever engineered. Superior plant health and vitality is a direct result of the structure and chemistry of your soil. How good is your growing soil? Is your growing soil really balanced? How do you know? Well, Blue Sage Microbes has a newly designed growing soil that is the most advanced growing medium ever offered for cannabis cultivation. This is the only brand in the marketplace that provides growers with an ideal soil structure designed to work specifically with their cultivation systems. You will have your best grow results ever. Call now for a special introductory offer, 888-959-8551, or log on to bluesagemicrobes.com and experience a new level in growing. That's 888-959-8551.
Tired of dispensary hopping? Trying to find quality meds? Look no further and get to know Greenworks. Our shops are stocked with over 20 strains of organically grown meds, including R4, the highest tested CBD strain in Colorado. Yes, we back up our quality with testing. While Greenworks offers only the highest quality meds, we don't believe in high prices, with eighths ranging from $20 to $40 and ounces capped at $175. With 2 centers in Denver and 1 in Glenwood Springs, we're likely closer than you think. Call 303-647-5210 to find the location nearest you.
I'm Gary Johnson, and you're listening to iCannabis Radio, and I want to say, talk it up, Colorado.
And we're back. All right. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the U.S. Pharmacopoeia Convention. And so that's another... so is this the same thing as the AOC, or is this a different thing?
Similar type of organization. You'll see a lot of USP methods more in sort of pharmaceutical type production facilities. They're a little tighter than the AOAC. The AOC is actually just a lot of testing methods, but the USP will assign test result limits as well as the test methods. So like a lot of microbial testing limits, total organic carbon, and those sorts of things that are used in manufacturing of pharmaceuticals.
Okay, yeah, because I know that in Washington we had a discussion on which recommended maximum microbial limits we should use. And it was basically between APA, which is the American Herbal Products Association guidance, and USP. And USP obviously a lot more stringent than APA. And about half the room voted for APA, half the room voted for USP. But then after we had had a discussion about it, clearly you smoke this plant or vape it, and people that are sick use it. So I think most of us decided at the end of the time that it should be under the U.S. Pharmacopoeia and those microbial limits. And it was actually horrifying what the labs in California had found. And I know that you have worked for a laboratory that did microbials, and you showed me a spreadsheet that looked like the chicken pox. What was that all about?
That was basically a spreadsheet outlining total aerobic counts, total fungal counts, and E. coli and salmonella. And there is actually a surprisingly large, or unsurprisingly, I guess if you've seen some grow rooms, presence of E. coli and salmonella. The aerobic bacteria is pretty much everywhere, so that's why that limit is higher. But the E. coli and the salmonella should be 0. They should never be present. And I actually had to put my graph into logarithmic scale to get a clear picture of how much stuff was actually there.
What does logarithmic scale mean?
It's on like 100, 1,000, 10,000, 1,000,000 scale instead of having like a single number on your graph.
Because there was so many.
Yeah.
You should have
Counts
seen
ranged
it.
into the tens and hundreds of thousands.
And that's in Colorado.
Well, and I think that until I really started reading about BMP and we had hot tests come back and we had no idea.
And you tested.
Yeah.
Imagine all the people that didn't test.
I mean, like, I never even realized. So a farm will fail immediately if there's a child under the age of 13 in the field or a animal, domesticated animal. Like, people have dogs in their grows all the time, and you think about it, they are shaking shit around. Like,
oh, yeah.
They're
when
disgusting.
They wag their tail. I mean, and the reason children, because they can't wash their hands well enough.
Oh.
And that's why they can't be
So
in
say
fields.
that again. Children under 13.
I believe it's under the age of 13. So, like, this is in commercial agriculture. And so this is the most applicable BMP to marijuana is good harvest practice, good agricultural practice. And so, yeah, if now it's interesting because the FDA doesn't actually certify farms, but these independent certifiers who are certified to certify do. So there's many, many different GAP and programs by different people, but they all have the certain similar elements. And one of those is, no children in the field. You will fail immediately your inspection. So if someone comes out and sees a dog or a wild,
Of course. I
like,
mean, but that makes sense with the kid.
wild animal or a domesticated animal or a child, you fail. Like, and that's it. They're like,
And what
okay.
happens?
I don't. You get corrective period. It probably depends how many times you've had issues with your certification.
And then we spoke before that you thought that your test came hot because of the tea, right? The compost.
Well, yeah, and probably poor trimmer practice too. Like after that came back, we literally would set a dinger every half hour. People would get up and wash their hands. And so certain people who didn't want to wear gloves would have to use antibacterial wipes like every time when they sat down, cleaning the scissors more often. Like, we have no idea where could have been mouse poop in our vents, like blowing through the air. It could have come from a million sources, but I sat there and after even talking to Heather, like, okay, what do I do and where do I go and how do I fix this? Because once you start looking at it, you're like, holy cow, there's 1,000,001 ways that this stuff comes into your environment. So you have to start checking off the list. But the number one thing they talk about in good best practice is washing hands, washing hands, washing hands. And so one of the things we did is we moved in portable hand wash stations into the grow. So there was, even though we didn't have, a sink in the middle of our grow, we had this portable hand washing station. So you could wash your hand after touching, plants. And our growers did not want to wear plastic gloves all day long, and I did not blame them for that. They're touching plants. They, the ones who are pruning, the ones trimmers, we pretty much said gloves only. But for the growers, so then they had to come every half hour and wash their hands too. So, I mean, we did the best we could. But it was really shocking to see those. That's not something you would ever expect.
Oh,
and
my
I can't
God.
even
I didn't even know it existed until this.
Some home grows probably look like. These guys are going from their bathroom to their grow and not being trained at all about any of this.
I mean, everyone's done that science experiment in high school where you go home and swab all sorts of different surfaces around your house and see how dirty they are. And people don't really want to remember that or take that into account when they are working in their grow room. I mean, the amount of animal hair that you see come in on samples is appalling.
We did that in our dorm room because, my degree's in microbiology. And we were told to bring in some food. And I brought in Jell-O. Oh, my God. My plate, needless to say, looked really pretty. It had a whole bunch of shit on it, or stuff on it. Oopsie. So it was horrible. I mean, horribly nasty. So back to your graph. So evidently Jill had a few spots on the graph. That scared me to death. Like, I could not believe it. And that was a small time that that test was, or those numbers were from. How long was that? A year? 2 years?
That was probably about 2 years ago.
2 years ago for about a year that you collected that data, right?
Probably about 500 samples were in that graph.
So, so Jeff Raber from the workshop, an amazing lab in California, he said the same thing. He said about a 25% fail. 25%.
Here's a question I have. So, yes, that's disgusting. And, we hear about people dying from cantaloupe, that they're ingesting raw. And we hear about people getting sick from salmonella. But, we have not seen people in Colorado getting sick. So,
that we know of.
So what is the ultimate, what's going to happen and how is someone going to get sick? And should the standards for adult use be separate from medical? In your opinion?
In my opinion, I do think that recreational and medical should probably be separate. Recreational maybe doesn't need to fall to quite as tight a standard in the same way that the vitamins you buy at Whole Foods are not on a same standard as the antibiotics you get prescribed to you by your doctor.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think that maybe if people have gotten sick, they haven't associated it with their use because there are so many other places. I mean, every other week you hear about there's some recall for some food because someone's got salmonella or E. coli, and it's always going to be out there. But I think for especially medical patients who are immunocompromised, they need to be knowing that they have a clean product that they're eating. And I mean, even with edibles makers, I'm hoping that, CDPHE certifies every other restaurant kitchen in the state. They need to certify those kitchens as well because salmonella is a big one. You're baking, you're using eggs, whatever. Your employee may not wash their hands.
And they're not certified at all.
Yeah,
That's the
know
thing
that
is,
those kitchens are not certified.
Some local jurisdictions will do inspections, but statewide, not touched by Med, not touched by CDPHE. They have purposely put in the legislation that adulterated food, which contains marijuana, is no longer a food product, and therefore it is not regulated at all. And I would, think that that's probably the higher risk. But so if you were, everybody always associates it with sharing a pipe. A lot of people will get sick and be like, we shared a pipe last night. Could that be something transferring from the marijuana itself? Because, I think most people get nauseous or sick and say, oh, it must have been that thing I ate. You never do think, oh, it's that stuff I smoked. But would it transfer the same way?
Yeah, I mean, we're putting the toxins onto the cannabis plant. So there's no reason why, if it's still alive and growing on there, if you're picking apart your raw plant and packing it into your bowl and then you're touching the side of your bowl, you're wiping the mouthpiece off because you don't want to share germs with somebody else. I never even thought
about that. I thought about inhaling it, but just by touching
the saliva
it,
and the touch and all of that. Do not. we did something really cool actually. We did team building, and we did PSAs, public service announcements on video. Oh my God, I've got to find them. And Drew, of course, Drew Strickland did a hilarious one about do not share your bong. It's flu season. Oh my God, you guys, I laughed so freaking hard. It was hilarious, but it's no joke. And I can tell you that there's some people that never clean anything. And I know that before I was in this industry, I had utensils that I had never cleaned ever.
Yeah, except when you were in college and desperate.
Probably, yeah.
Then you clean it.
But you know what? I also am of the school that the more you allow yourself to be exposed to, the stronger your immune system gets. But I do believe, immunocompromised AIDS patients, cancer, you just can't be fooling around with that. So, when you're a patient, you really do need to take care of where you buy your product because it does it makes a huge difference. And once these testing is mandated and all of these shops have to, follow some kind of limits and everything, it's gonna be very, very interesting because after seeing that spreadsheet and then talking to other labs in California, there are so many people that have contaminated grows that don't even know it, and now they'll know and they'll have to do the right thing. So we are going to take a break and we'll be right back.
Call Canisher at 1-800-420-5757 for all your insurance needs. Canisher understands the risks you face each day, and we are there to protect your business and your investment. Since 2010, Canisher has been serving the cannabis industry nationwide. Call Canisher at 1-800-420-5757 or visit us on the web at canisher.com to learn more about our insurance and risk management services. Proud member of the NCIA.
Indispensary in Colorado Springs is proud to support Overgrow the Radio. With 2 locations in Colorado Springs, Indispensary invites you to discover what true selection and values feel like. Always featuring an incredible array of Stanley Brothers medicine as well as full line of edible and infused products. Indispensary is open from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week, 364 days a year. You owe it to your health and well-being to discover Indispensary. Westside location at 3044 West Colorado and Eastside location at 3031 East Platte in Colorado Springs. Indispensary is your destination for indispensable quality medicine.
Green Faith Ministry is for spiritual guidance, MMJ information, and networking combined with compassionate care on the way to enlightenment with all Green Faith sacraments. Green Faith provides charity assistance, including medical and food throughout the year. Contact them at greenfaithministry.com.
And we're back. So let's talk about ISO certification, because it's really funny. Once people have heard of ISO, they don't even know what it is, but they like to throw it out there. Oh, are you ISO certified? They don't even know what it means. So let's talk about this particular one is ISO 17025, right? General requirements.
Yep. There are 2 popular methods that everyone likes to talk about, the 9001 and the 17025. The 17025 is basically just telling you how you need to keep your laboratory in check, how you calibrate your instruments, how you calibrate your pH meter, how you calibrate your pipettes, what you should be using as reference standards.
Wait, can I ask you what a pipette is? Because it's cute. I was wondering.
Pipette is just a little device that helps you measure out certain volumes of liquid.
Like measuring spoons?
Sort of, but a lot more accurate.
Can I have some for my kitchen?
And you have to have them third-party tested.
And those have to have someone like internally, and so the ISO will also tell you like you need to do internal audits and internal calibrations, but then you need to also have a third party come in and calibrate your pipettes and make sure that they are actually dispensing the volume that you are telling it to dispense, so that when you are making your standards and solutions, everything is correct.
But when you say calibrate, so it's not like a measuring, like I'm envisioning like a big champagne flute, but like when it says pipette, but like is it something that like injects, like you pour liquid into and it dispenses a certain amount? No,
you have like a cup of liquid, a beaker in our lovely science world, and then basically it looks like a giant Sharpie pen that you press down on a lever, you set your volume, you press down on the lever, suck it up, and it should suck up that exact volume, and it should dispense that exact volume. So if it's off, when you're prepping your samples, if your pipette is off by 10%, your sample result is going to be off by 10% or higher. And so that part of the ISO requires that. And then the 9001 part is basically a giant quality assurance manual, which tells you that you need to have a team specifically dedicated to making sure that you are doing everything according to the methods that you have. And the quality assurance people go through and make sure that, oh, yep, you actually did calibrate your balance today, and you actually did calibrate your pH meter, and it's within tolerance.
And you can see how that gets really expensive, because you do have to third party, test your scales, pipettes, and stuff, and we do that.
Are they like the same company that comes in and does it all, or like they're pipette people and scale people? And
no, they do both, right?
Yeah.
They just that's all they do is they go and say, oh, great, your scale's great, $100, please. Oh, great, your pipette's great, $100, please. Cha-ching! I mean, but, it's definitely needed.
We're in the wrong business. We should just drive around and measure things all day.
Yeah, we're in the wrong business. But, so ISO certification, though, is not cheap. It's extremely expensive, isn't it?
From what I understand, I have worked at facilities that have been ISO certified, but I do not have any idea of how much that costs.
Well, could fathom, I guess, and it's not.
It's
cheap.
probably in the thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it says $5,000 to $50,000. So, depending on.
Well, and there's
Usually the size of your laboratory.
consultants that come in and help you first because all your policies and procedures have to be exactly the way they want them. It's like a racket.
They actually have a
It's
manual
like the
that tells you how to do
Bureau.
it.
Yeah.
Better Business Bureau. Racket.
I tried to join the Better Business Bureau as a dispensary. They wouldn't let me.
You know what's so sad is everybody thinks to join it, and it is such a racket. I have tried to, go in and ask about a company that I knew was doing shady stuff, and it's just they have built a mastery. Woo! Now, hopefully somebody's going to pull that same racket with testing. Just kidding. So ISO certification, and it takes years, like 2 years, doesn't it?
It can. It's a really long process. For a small company such as Cannlabs, it might not take nearly as long as a very large pharmaceutical manufacturer like Merck. Might take a little bit longer for them to get certified because they have hundreds of employees and multiple facilities. But it's still a lengthy, time-consuming process, and it involves people coming in and examining every facet of your operation.
Wow. No, and I definitely want to do this. I mean, I can't wait till we're able to do something like this. And I think the obviously the more we progress, the more people will, jump in.
Well, the thing too is, in Massachusetts, they're essentially going to establish or approve that third-party certifier. So they'll probably run some sort of RFP process, and you're going to get people like APA and ASA and other organizations who are going to go in and get this certification to certify. So it will be happening soon. I mean, between the new regs that are coming out in Massachusetts and then Washington State coming online, obviously they're talking about they're going to have to start certifying some people. So you're going to see this is going to be as competitive in ancillary business as anything else in this industry. And so the first few people who do it right and get these state nods, they'll pretty much win the game. And it's not cheap, like you said, it's $7,500 a pop probably for most people.
Sure. I mean, it's very expensive. Science is very expensive. Overall, and it's been extremely expensive since there hasn't been mandation, and I understand a lot of it's been the cart before the horse, so it's really hard to get people on board, but I think that Heather and I were talking about it, and she once we get our validation up and stuff, that before you came in, she's working on validating our method and stuff. Once that gets posted and people actually can see, and we can, start talking about it and what that means. One of the problems is we have one instrument right now, one HPLC, and it's really hard to do, all of that stuff and keep your business afloat and, not work everyone 100,000 hours. So, it helps when you have instruments dedicated to research and stuff like that, and instruments dedicated to your testing volume. So,
well, I know
anyway.
with 1284, I haven't, or not 1284, it's 1317 now. That labs will be able to, I think, produce products as well. So, like someone formulates a product, and then labs will be able to do manufacturing.
Really?
I think so. I got to double check.
Yeah, because
extractions, things like that. So,
well, that only makes sense because, I mean, really, you don't know what you have unless you test it. So, in order to really make an outstanding product, you have to test all the time. I mean, every step of the way.
Well, and it makes sense for people who that's not their core competency.
Well, right.
Like, you develop a product and then you unfortunately, mostly overseas, but other people manufacture it for you.
Yeah.
It's, that it's economy of scale. Like, I'm not a manufacturer, but I want a couple things made. I shouldn't have to go out and build a manufacturing plant. I should
Exactly
be able to have
right.
someone else do it for me.
Interesting. I didn't read into that, but
I am looking at it right now.
well, and it makes sense on so many ways. I mean, but I cannot still believe this cake stuff. I'm calling him like ASAP. Can you believe that?
It smells like birthday cake ice
It
cream.
smells like
even with
frickin-
sprinkles.
Who took it? He took it away from me. I was having a sniffing fest and he took it away. How dare you take away my sniffer?
Jen's over here sniffing.
Just kidding. But anyway, okay, so they only listed a couple of those on here. Is that pretty much everyone that they thought could third party? Do you think, Heather? Or just what Washington thought?
It's probably just what Washington thought. These organizations can do it, but there's also no reason why there couldn't be another third-party organization that is certified to certify laboratories.
Absolutely, which would make sense if it was something, but we won't mention what that something is. Okay, so besides microbials, let's talk about pesticides, because I know you've done a lot of and you've developed some pesticide testing. Were there a lot of pesticides that ran hot?
Unfortunately, I was only looking at 2 pesticides.
Okay.
I was looking at DDT, which is illegal,
Right.
but is not illegal in China, and they use it heavily. Research has been published about Canadians finding DDT in their crops because of the DDT getting into the atmosphere and transferring over. So I was looking at DDT because that would mostly affect outdoor grows, and then pyrethrin mostly because from the growers that I talked to, it was the number one pesticide that they had used.
Right.
Not a lot of people did a lot of it, but there was definitely a good amount of positive hits for pyrethrin. I did luckily not come up with any positive hits for DDT. But I don't think Colorado has a large outdoor grow consortium yet, but we'll see if that changes.
Well, and I think pyrethrum is a perfect example of something that people thought was safe. Originally, it's from chrysanthemums. So people thought pyrethrum was safe, but it turns out it's carcinogenic when inhaled. So.
Oh, awesome. Really?
Yes. So, it just goes to show
That definitely shouldn't be on the list. I mean, really?
Mm-hmm.
Pyrethrum.
Well, and the interesting thing about getting pesticides to the market is I'm not sure really why the EPA decided to do this, but pesticide manufacturers have to determine their own testing protocol and then test it on various crops and then submit that to the EPA for approval rather than the EPA determining a specific testing method and determining the toxicity levels on their own. So I think there is a little bit of a bias to try and get new products to the market, and then all of a sudden long-term research comes out, and suddenly it's carcinogenic and banned.
Interesting. And that just came out? The carcinogenic stuff?
Pyrethrum, I mean, I learned probably 2 years ago from a horticulturist, and had we weren't using it, but it was just something that people generally thought was good to use because it's from chrysanthemum, it's organic, and it's something you assume to be healthy, but when inhaled.
See, and again, we eat other plants. We don't inhale them.
But it's also when it's used in the growth cycle, and that's one of the most important things that we need from testing is to know the half-life of so many of these things that may be okay in veg, but never in flower. It's not, you don't wash your buds off.
And pyrethrin has a half-life of 14 days in direct UV light, but if you're in a veg phase, you're not having 24 hours worth of light. If you apply more than once and your grow cycle is 6 to 8 weeks long, then you have repeated applications, and so now you've built up what's already in there, so it's going to certainly take more than 14 days to have half of it left.
Well, unfortunately, the majority of the time people are using it, unfortunately, is when you're going to find a heavy concentration is right before harvest because all of a sudden they have an infestation, and so they're called bombs. I don't really know how they work, but it's like these cans of pyrethrum, and people bomb their harvest right before they're about to harvest. And it's generally going to be before 14 days, because you're not going to do that to your plants unless you absolutely have to, and you think you're about to lose a good percentage of your yield, and that's in the last 2 weeks where you're going to make that decision, because you're either going to let them go with the mites, and deal with the damage, or you're going to say, these are going to do too much damage. I need to do something, and that is bombing.
Would you rather smoke a mite or a pesticide?
A mite any day. I eat peanut butter.
A little extra protein.
Right. So I'm confused.
Well, and that's
I mean, no one's going to buy it with mites in it, of course, but...
Well, no, and I mean, you have an outdoor garden. I have powdery mildew on my squash right now, but I can wash them off.
I know, that's the problem. You're smoking this stuff.
I have a dog.
So you shouldn't be able to bomb that.
Shouldn't be able to, but people do. And unless someone starts randomly testing, they're going to continue to do it. Right.
Well, yeah. So, that's something.
And some people don't. There are lots of people who don't. But
of course.
When it comes down to it.
Well, when you're going to lose, listen, there's a big payoff for using that, obviously.
When people talk about losing crops to mites, you don't lose a crop to mite. You lose yield to mites. Like, very rarely is your mite infestation going to be so bad that they're devastating your plants. It's that they're sucking the life out of them, and your yield, that's what you're going to lose.
Got it.
Yield. And then you're going to have your trimmers in there trying to pick bug carcasses out. So that's, the dilemma.
Chris has a question.
Yes.
Why are they called mites when they leave a web?
They're called spider mites, actually.
Why is it a mite?
Yeah, because a spider does webs.
Web, mite doesn't do web, right?
I don't know. I'll look it up, but... I'll look it up. But there's also root aphids, so those are a major problem, and something that, most people had known about regular aphids, but, as this industry grew up in Colorado and different things started coming in, root aphids was a new thing to growers, and they sucked the yield right out of those plants. And they were living in the dirt, so they weren't visible on the plant, generally. So, I mean... These growers are learning new stuff all the time, but I'll look up why spider mite's called spider mite.
Well, it's interesting because people think that there are people that think that you cannot grow marijuana without pesticides. And it's interesting because now there's 3 states that say no pesticides. Maine,
Massachusetts changed.
They did.
No, they changed from no pesticides to only organic pesticides. But as we know, with my computer died, so I can't look up why it's called spider mite. But they changed from, in their final rules, they had enough feedback from people saying we do need to be able to use some pesticides and some are safe. They changed from to only organic, but as we know from pyrethrum, which can be organic, that's not necessarily better.
And we'll take a break and we'll be right back. This segment was brought to you by The Farm, a medical marijuana care center located at 2801 Iris Street in Boulder. The Farm carries premium cannabis, edibles, and Hummingbird brand products. Visit our new cannabis lifestyle store for your local artesian glass, vaporizers, and hemp clothing. The Farm has been serving Boulder since 2009. Isn't it time you come and see what we have to offer?
Cannapunch is a delicious and effective medical marijuana beverage proudly made right here in Colorado. Each bottle is freshly infused with 100% pure flower extract from the highest grade marijuana plants available today. Using proprietary extraction methods, every bottle of Cannapunch is consistently and reliably infused with an exact milligram dosage that you can count on to relieve your symptoms each and every time. Cannapunch is delicious. There's never any medicine-y taste. We use only 100% cannabis flowers. No trim or byproducts are ever used in Cannapunch. It does not require refrigeration and comes in convenient, resealable multi-dose bottles from 60 milligrams to 200 milligrams. We have drinks with dosage that works best for you. Cannapunch is available in a variety of delicious flavors like black cherry, watermelon, pineapple mango, and blue raspberry. And we now have strain-specific beverages available just for you. Cannapunch is delicious, convenient, consistent, and effective. Give it a try and experience the Cannapunch difference. iVita Wellness is committed to compassionate patient care while providing the highest quality medicine at an affordable price. At iVita Wellness, patients can get top shelf ounces for $150 every day. iVita Wellness also carries pharmaceutical-grade pure CO2 oil. iVita Wellness is located in Uptown Denver on 1616 Pearl Street. Open 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. You can reach us at 303-952-9150 or our website at www.ivitawellness.com. iVita Wellness is Denver's Compassionate Care Center.
The National Cannabis Industry Association would like to thank its members who represent the leading professional businesses in America's emerging legal cannabis market. NCIA is the only organization that has unified legitimate cannabis business across the nation to fight for real reform in Washington, D.C. For more information or to make your business a member, visit us online at thecannabisindustry.org.
Uh-oh. It's totally fine. It's not any better than it was before, that's for sure.
Oh, now I'm going to get in big trouble.
No, it's totally fine.
It's all good.
Jill just smoked some I'm just kidding. That's not funny. So, Connecticut said no pesticides?
Connecticut still says no pesticides.
Okay, Maine, no pesticides?
Maine, no pesticides. They may change that after the whole incident with Maine Wellness, but Maine's no pesticides. Massachusetts is no in organic pesticides. So
organic, inorganic, it's probably still not a great idea to smoke them.
I don't know. You guys have to tell us that.
I know. That's
because I know that it's much easier to control a garden with them, and that,
of course,
there should be certain phases in the life, cycle where it should be okay to use them, but at the same time, I want to know what they are and when, and it makes it a heck of a lot easier. And I put pesticides on my home garden, so pesticide doesn't it has such a negative connotation, but it's the ones you use that are.
It's everything that kills a pest. You enlighten me. You're like, Jen, a pesticide is anything that kills a pest.
Anything. Whether it's what's it called, diatomaceous earth, which is ground up shells, and you put it around. And I use this at home. You put it around your doors, so when bugs crawl over it, they it's like shards of glass to them.
I put it on top of my potted plants so I don't get fruit flies.
Yeah, and
that is awesome.
Completely natural. It's a pesticide.
You crush up shells and put it.
Isn't that what it is? It's
it's like you can buy it in the auto parts section of a store.
No kidding.
It soaks up oil. People use it to soak up spilled oil on the floors of their home garages and stuff.
Shells? I guess they are
they're
porous,
they're ground up. The limestone absorbs stuff, and it works really well. It shreds the bodies. No fruit flies in my house anymore. My
grandpa taught me about boric acid kills ants. There's.
All right.
This is even organic home gardening 101. You read an organic home gardening magazine, and half the stuff they tell you can do is now going to be illegal. It makes it really hard to do for people.
Well, and I also think we're getting too crazy now, especially with kids. Are you kidding me? We had cement playgrounds, we had rocks, we had, and helmets. Are you kidding me?
My kids don't wear helmets unless
And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but
no, the looks we get.
Oh, I'm sure. You're a child abuser.
Yeah, because we don't do helmets.
My dad used to ski blacks with me on his shoulders when I was 2 years old. Oh my God, you'd get arrested today.
That I would be. My uncle put us on the back, 3 girls on the back of a motorcycle with no helmets.
Awesome. See? Yeah. And you're fine.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
On the back, and I took off, and he fell right off.
At the same time, I was buying we're way off topic, but this story still, to this day, it stays with me. I was buying a kid bike seat, and it was a really cool one. It goes in your front when my daughter was really young, and the guy was telling me in the store, the story. This guy had just had a bike seat installed. He had his 2-year-old in it. He was just riding around the parking lot, and he just something happened, and the bike fell over. Kid died.
Oh my God.
in
that's
the bike
horrifying.
store parking lot. So, like, my 2-year-old on my bike seat wore helmets, but now that they're a little bit older, like, I don't know, fighting with them to wear that helmet. It's so hot. I don't wear a helmet. I don't,
I know it's really tough, but I mean, it's crazy. Like I have girlfriends that are like wet wipe freaks. Like they get out of the car, wet wipes. They get in this, wet wipes. And it's like, how is your body ever going to build resistance? All of this sunscreen that's just caking on chemicals into your skin. Like, how is your body ever going to be able to defend against anything?
Well, for me as a mom, I'm always like, as much time as someone else spends wet wiping, I have a sick kid who lays still for like a day. Like, if their kids never get sick, like, how much time is that?
No,
Like,
but if you don't get sick, you don't, build it up.
Seriously, I don't have that much time. Go to bed. Yeah, you're sick? Oh, cartoons and soup, and you're so quiet and nice. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I don't have kids. So, are you looking forward to that?
So off topic.
But anyway, so certification can take quite a while. But a lot of it is just the paperwork and making sure you have a safety plan and
well, it's getting your own internal
document.
house in order. So I think once you're certified, then it's pretty easy to keep up with changes. But it's that, getting everything set the way they want it and being prepared for the audit and not calling an auditor before you're ready. So
right. Yeah, I mean to get Cannlabs up to, we have to add on microbials and pesticides and mold and mildew and all of that. So with since aerobic, I mean literally, like you can get a little kit and wave it around and there's mold obviously in the air. So how do they determine that? I mean, literally they count all these colonies?
Yep. Well, not all of those. So you take a small fraction and dilute it down sequentially, and then you go back onto your math. Because clearly that's way too many colonies to count.
I'm like, oh my God, Heather, you're going to be doing – I'm kidding.
The USP and the AHPA kind of indicate that you need to have between like 0 and 250 colonies. And if you have more than 250 colonies on your plate, you need to dilute and replate so that you can have an accurate count. They also make these lovely machines that have grids on them that help you count colonies. They're expensive, of course.
How much are those?
Brand new, $9,000.
Jiminy Christmas. Can't somebody make some
toys
cheap stuff?
Toys are expensive.
Yeah.
Toys?
And I have really good taste in expensive toys.
Yes, those are like toys for her.
Yeah,
like,
and she can get
but
them
I also
at a discounted
have
price.
Really good price negotiation skills.
And then we were also talking about heavy metals. I get quite a few calls about testing heavy metals. And how much is that? What'd you say? Looks like a toaster. How much is that instrument?
Brand new ICP-MS, it runs you about $150,000.
Yeah, that's it.
It's the size of a toaster.
Yeah, size of a toaster.
The new ones. The old ones are about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle.
Oh my God, really?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
They take up a lot of space in your laboratory, but the new ones are about the size of a toaster oven, and they're really nice.
Yeah.
Which is why they're $150,000.
So let's see. HPLC, 100. Ching. GCMS, 120. Ching. What was that?
ICP-MS.
ICP-MS, 150. Ching. You can see how it's very expensive.
5% testing, yeah.
That's with 5% of people that are testing in the industry. Oh, and then don't forget about the pesticides, the GC. Oh, that was the GCMS. But then all your
But you
solvents.
need a separate GC to run a different method. As I was discussing with Chris earlier, the residual solvent method that we are currently running is just dandy, but we would need an additional GC, MS, and the MS to run the pesticides because they require different running conditions.
See? I mean, you just can't win.
It too.
Yeah.
Done.
You really and people wonder why, how come my test is $80? Well, that's why. Plus the fact that we have workman's comp and insurance for our employees, and we get third-party certifications.
Well, even
and
that, like I
rent.
brought in my water to the local whatever to get it tested for fluoride because I had a well, and I needed something, and that test was $65, like
For one number.
for fluoride.
Right.
Well, they did a full something, but it was, it's kind of what you expect.
I mean, Chromadex charges $250 for one number. One number. I mean, it's just not cheap. So that is why the price is so high. But if 100% of the industry tested, or even 50% of the industry tested, our prices would go down.
That's a question I have. Like, okay, so if you're just running a cannabinoid profile, how long does that take?
How long does the run?
Yeah, like from start to finish. Like I drop off my sample and then someone comes and grabs it. And if they were to start at point A and end at point B, how long does that take?
It just depends on sample prep of the product, the run time.
Like what's
flour?
What goes into say I bring in a bud. What goes into sample prep and how does that work? Like what do you do once I give you my bud?
Once your bud comes in, it gets logged in, and then it gets a nice, lovely photograph taken of it so that it's still pretty before we mash it all up into bits. And then it gets measured out. You dispense your solvent into it. You do the extraction process, which can take anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour.
Is that by hand, or is there like a EFD machine?
There's a handy little machine that helps with the extraction process. And then you put it on the instrument that has a runtime that varies between 8 minutes and a half an hour, depending on what method you're using. Now multiply that by 50 samples a day, plus the time that it physically takes you to actually log your stuff in, physically upload your photo of it, physically put it on the instrument, physically let the instrument run, and then have to upload all of your data into it. It can be time-consuming. Efficiency is something that we are going to continue to strive for.
Then waste removal. So then you have to put that into two separate waste containers.
So about 45 minutes a test.
Give or take. In edibles, a long time. Like some edibles, it is like pulling teeth to get the cannabinoids out of the edible. Yeah. What do you think the worst? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, one of the state, I can't remember. I think it's Connecticut. They asked for homogeneous batches of marijuana. And so that means grind it up. And we're trying to explain to them, no, we don't want to grind up all our marijuana. That's exactly opposite of what we want to do. So what would you suggest if you have a pound? Like, what's a good amount of bud to take as a random sample to actually, because, I actually Full Spectrum did a test with one of our plants, and
you're not allowed to say that name on the radio. I'm just kidding.
Well, they did though, and they
totally
tested
kidding.
Top, mid, and bottom, and
there's about an 8% difference.
Yeah. So when I'm a state regulator saying I want customers to have good information, how many samples do I need to take from a pound, do you think, before? Because it's not the same.
I mean, is that pound coming from the same plant? Is it coming from multiple plants? Are you taking a sample before it's even harvested, which I think would be the better way to do it, is because there's too high of a volume to literally take a top, middle, and bottom from each plant. There's also probably a little resistance from growers. Do you really want to give up 3 grams off of each plant? Well, and that's only 3 grams for a potency test. You need
right.
You need a gram for each test. So if you're running potency, micro, pesticides, and heavy metals, that's 12 grams per plant.
And residual solvent.
And residual solvent.
Never mind. We don't do residual solvent.
And what's the, one thing I was thinking about suggesting was maybe a blended average, because most growers are cutting down and trimming the plant, and it's all going in the same bucket. Like, if it was a different world and there was more time, I'd say put the bottom over here, in the middle over here, and the top over here, but that's just not what happens. So if a patient wants to, or a customer wants to know the average amount that they're going to have from this batch, I guess it's the mid-range number you're looking for. But if you're highly sensitive to THC and get anxiety, and the top of the plant's 26 and the middle of the plant's 18, like, what do you think's
Gauge
best?
that.
Yeah, for people to use, because it's even like, we have numbers now, but it's still not to the point where someone could be like, I can't have anything over 24, or I get really, really nervous.
Well, I think there's probably two different ways you can do it. The USDA has sampling guidelines, like you go into a cornfield, you pull X number of corn ears off of X number of plants per acre. So you could set up a sampling guideline like that where you would need to take an average, and I just lost track of my second idea.
Of the room. Well, here's the thing. You can do less samples, right? Let's say, because most people have grow rooms, not just one room, because if something gets contaminated, right? Or grow sections, right? Because don't the plants talk? I mean, I can't even grow a cactus.
There's
like I
two
said,
schools of thought. There's either people who say, I want completely segregated rooms with different air ventilation and different everything. And then you have people who, I want the most air motion and light spectrum I can get, and I want one big open room. Like, it just depends who you're talking to.
So let's talk to the big room. If you take, you could take that big room, right? And you could take a little sample from everything. And I'm not talking about potency. But let's say for pesticides, okay? Grind it all up, we do the test, and then it comes back hot. And then what do? You have this huge, gigantic room that it's like, okay, so really you should narrow your sections down to a certain number. What's that number? I don't know. But I mean, if you really are doing everything right and you know that you're not hot, then why not take a bit, take a big room and sample it like I just said.
Well, you're going to know if you either used pesticides or you didn't. You
either used them really late or you didn't. So if you did use them late, you probably should do a smaller section because it's going to go.
And so I say the pesticide testing more for the benefit of the regulator, because most people are either know they've got it or they don't. So they're probably not willing, unless they think some sneaky grower is spraying pesticides behind their back, which could be a thing. If it's banned in a certain area and you've hired a grower and they have certain metrics they need to reach and you're an owner, they very well may apply stuff behind your back to keep their yield, to keep their job. So
that's really scary.
That actually an owner might want to randomly select stuff. But I'm thinking more for like potency, because you do.
Yeah.
You talk to those people who are like, I smoked once, I got so nervous, I've never smoked again. And
totally.
I know immediately, like, you smoked the wrong kind. But until people can really learn their number and be for sure that this is,
Or the ratio.
Right. What is that? Like, how much should they be testing per batch? And most people are looking, when they say batch, it's how much did I cut down that day as a batch. So I understand that, like, segregating rooms, but I think if you apply pesticide, you know damn well you did it. So it's more the microbial outbreak. Like, it's in this section. Oh, Gary works in that section.
Gary screwed.
Gary? We think we need to or if you do have, like, somebody can be a carrier of a disease and not know it.
Oh, really?
Yep. So,
a person?
Yes.
To plants?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Very interesting. So. We're going to learn so much, but you didn't tell me it's 4:07. Okay. But anyway, all right. Well, we'll wrap it up, but thank you so much. And, of course, Heather's going to be on every time something super, super exciting happens, because I know she wasn't thrilled to come on the radio, but and Jill's trying to leave me. All right. Well, thank you, and we'll see you next week on In the Lab with Genifer.
Bye, everybody.